now it's time for us to bring forward someone that who is our special guest. Bring up Khalil Thompson. Khalil, we of course been doing these phone calls since July, and so joining us is the former president, 44th president of the United States, Barack Obama.
Well, thank you, Roland. It's an honor to have him here. It's a big moment for us at Women Black Men, a major moment. There's only a Superman second to my president, 44. That's my dad, Oswald Thompson. So I know he's watching tonight. President, it is an amazing honor to have you here with us to do some good community organizing. And with that, we are going to turn it over to you, sir.
It is great to be with all of you. And I could not be prouder of a couple of you. Khalil and Mike Blake, who worked on my campaign. Y'all were young men, and I'm noticing some gray. I'm not the only guy who's getting a little gray here, but you guys have taken the torch. And Roland obviously was on the scene throughout my presidency. To see what all of you have organized, to see the hundreds of thousands of African-American men who you have activated, mobilized, connected, lifted up, to see the concrete work that is being done at the grassroots level, to educate folks on the issues, to raise money, to register people. I could not be prouder. And it is a testament not only to your skills and your commitment to making sure that our democracy works for us and our communities and our people. But it's also a testament to the fact that there are a lot of brothers out there who want to get involved, and if given the opportunity and given a direction, are ready to roll up their sleeves and make things happen. Look, I know y'all have been on, continuously over the course of this campaign. I don't have to tell you that this is going to be a very tight election. As my wife said yesterday, some of you I'm sure caught her speech in Kalamazoo. It shouldn't be this close because the candidates are not comparable. You have, on the one hand, Donald Trump, somebody who as president of the United States, showed contempt for huge sections of the country, who did not, show the capacity to move legislation that actually helped ordinary people. Somebody who botched the response to the pandemic in ways that were profoundly costly to not just our communities, but communities all across America. And somebody whose main motivation seems to be his ego and his money and his status, and whose politics is basically focused on how do we divide people between us, meaning people like him or people who support him, and them, everybody else. And that kind of divisive politics, look, there's a long history of that in America, but it's not the kind of politics that moves things forward. It's not the kind of politics that creates jobs or helps people afford the rent or provides young people with a quality education or moves the country forward in terms of building and adapting to this future economy. And providing people the skills they need to compete. So that's their nominee. And on the other side, you've got Kamala Harris, who at every stage has shown herself to be a champion of ordinary people, who works to provide a voice for folks who need it, who has displayed consistent excellence at every level, from being a district attorney to being a Attorney General of California, to being a U.S. Senator, and now to being Vice President. She is as qualified as any presidential nominee that we've ever seen. And her message is directly focused on the challenges that we face as Black men and that our communities face and that America faces. You know, she has very concrete ideas in terms of how do we bring down prices and costs. She has very concrete ideas, building 3 million new homes to help make housing more affordable and to help first-time home buyers have the down payment they need in order to be able to move into a new home and get that piece of the American dream. She's focused on entrepreneurship. And, you know, as I'm sure all of you have spoken about, you know, the time has passed where people are looking for something for free. They want something of their own, something they can build. And the opportunity for them to get $20,000 or $30,000 to start up a business, to be able to work hard and ultimately not only help their families, but help their communities by building wealth and building you know, investment opportunities and creating the kinds of Black-owned businesses that can succeed. That is the kind of agenda that she's got. And she has run an outstanding campaign over these last 3 months. But it's still going to be tight. And it's going to be tight in a handful of states. And a fraction of voters, 1%, 2%, 3%, a few thousand votes in a few counties in North Carolina or Georgia or Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin or Nevada or Arizona. That's going to determine whether or not we've got the kind of country that understands and believes and cares about our communities, or a government that dismisses it and disregards it and sees us as an afterthought. Now, a couple of things I wanted to just add to this, because I've been traveling all across the country. I've been getting a chance to meet folks, talk to brothers, see what's on their minds. And a couple of things that I've heard. Number one is, understandably, a lot of our folks are concerned about the economy. And they say, you know what? I've got memories that those first couple of years of Donald Trump's presidency, the economy was pretty good. Well, you know, they're right about that. What they don't seem to understand, and I think it's important for everybody who is listening to help explain to people, is that the economy was good Donald Trump's first 2 years because it was my economy. I had spent 8 years previously, and Roland remembers this, and Michael and Khalil and others, you guys remember, when we came in, we had a crisis on our hands of unprecedented magnitude. And we dug ourselves out of the hole that had been caused by a Republican presidency and lax regulation of Wall Street. And we put the auto industry back on track. We stabilized the financial system. And we had 75 months of straight job growth when I turned the economy over to Donald Trump. That was not his doing. That was our doing. The only thing he did was to cut taxes for folks who didn't need it, for billionaires and gazillionaires. And that is what he's now trying to claim credit for. All he did was drive up the deficit and make rich people richer. It didn't help us. So that's point number one. And I just want to make sure that people understand that so that they don't have some hazy memory about that. Second thing I hear folks say is, well, during the pandemic, Trump sent us a check. You know what? First of all, it was Congress and Democrats and Republicans who sent you a check. Just like Joe Biden, working with Congress, sent you a check during the pandemic, emergency relief, just like I sent emergency relief to people during the Great Recession when I first came into office. The difference is that Joe Biden and I did not put our names on the check. So do not think that somehow because you got a check from Donald Trump, quote unquote, during the pandemic, that somehow that's something special that he did, and that justifies you giving him his vote. So that's the second thing I hear. And then the third thing that I've been hearing from a lot of guys I talk to is, well, what does it matter? Because the Democratic Party and Republican Party, it doesn't make any difference. Things don't change in my neighborhood. People are still getting shot. People still don't have jobs. There's still disinvestment. And I have to remind folks that, politics is not going to change everything. Sometimes we overhype it. Certainly we overhyped it when I got elected. People talked about, well, there's a sign that racism is gone. He's going to help make sure that there's no more poverty in America. That no president has that power. What a president can do is make things better or make things worse. They can't solve every problem. And so when I was president, we made sure that people who didn't have health care had a chance to get health care. Now 50 million people have the Affordable Care Act. And as a consequence, there are a whole bunch of people who previously, if they got sick, were out of luck, might have lost their home, might have lost everything they had, all their savings, just to try to get treatment. Now they can purchase cheap, affordable, and high quality health care in ways they couldn't do that before. 50 million people. 50 million more people, if they've got pre-existing conditions, can now obtain insurance and previously would not have been able to obtain insurance. That didn't solve the entire healthcare problem, but it made things better for a whole lot of folks. Everybody who's listening today, somebody who's got health insurance because of what we did. So in the same way that Obamacare made a difference, what Kamala and Joe Biden did on making insulin cheaper, capping the cost at $35 or 50 prescription drugs, capping that because now the government's negotiating prices. That means your grandmother, your father, your mother are able to afford health insurance or afford prescription drugs that they might not have otherwise been able to obtain. And they're better for it. Their lives have improved. It didn't solve all the problems in the healthcare system, but it made things better. And that's how politics works. The flip side is it can make things, a bad president can make things worse. I mentioned the pandemic and COVID. America had a 60% worse death rate than Canada. And over 1 million people died in America. So about 600,000 people died disproportionately, by the way, African-American or Latino, that didn't necessarily need to die if we had had a better response. And I put together a playbook for how to deal with pandemics 3 years before the pandemic happened. And I handed it over to Donald Trump. And he basically ignored it. And when the pandemic showed up, because he had not followed the plan, not prepared agencies, he was just winging it and ended up saying crazy stuff about injecting bleach as a cure for COVID. COVID would have been a problem for any president, but making it better would have saved lives. Donald Trump did not. And those lives, somebody passed away as a consequence of a poor response to that crisis coming out of the White House. So the point I'm trying to make, I guess, is this. When you are talking to people who say politics don't matter, concede to them, acknowledge to them, yeah, it's not going to solve every problem, but it can make a difference in terms of our schools a little bit better funded. Are there more Pell Grants out there to make college a little bit more affordable? Are we going to maintain the progress that we've made and build on it when it comes to making sure our communities have health care, preventive care, checkups? And as Michelle talked about yesterday, are we going to make sure that our mothers, our daughters, our sisters, that they have access to basic reproductive health care? that is so vital to them. And we're already seeing an increase in infant mortality since the Trump abortion ban got adopted essentially in 20 states. I will close with this. You know, we don't have what's called direct democracy. You know, we don't vote on everything. We vote for people to then represent our interests, and a president is supposed to represent all the people, and you know, has got a million decisions that will come before him or her. And we can't know all facets of the government and all the decisions that are being made on a daily basis. So what we count on is electing somebody who's got the values and the character to do the job, the competence to do the job. And what we also count on is, do they see us? Do they care about us? Is this somebody who understands how I live and what my hopes and dreams and aspirations are? And Kamala Harris does. You know, she grew up middle class. She went to an HBCU. She understands what our communities go through, the struggles, having to work a little bit harder to get ahead, having to put up with stuff that, you know, hopefully in the future, our children and grandchildren won't have to put up with. And in contrast, Donald Trump has shown utter disrespect and disregard for our communities and for Black men specifically throughout his career. I mean, this is somebody who took out a full-page ad calling on the Central Park Five to be put to death. Somebody whose family made money not renting to Black people, and was taken to court by the government because they didn't want to rent to Black people. That's what he has displayed. Remember, he came into politics most recently by suggesting I was not born in the United States. I mean, that wasn't subtle. He was sending a message that real Americans are different from y'all. And the one thing I know is that you can't have somebody representing you who doesn't see you and respect you and is not going to have your experience, your concerns in mind as they're making these decisions. So, look, bottom line is, if over the next few days, and we only have a few days left, you are reaching out to people who are suggesting that this doesn't matter, or heaven forbid, are thinking that somehow Donald Trump has the answers to what ails our communities, it's going to be your task to educate them, because a lot of them are basing what they are thinking about this race on what they're seeing on TikTok. And I don't have the capacity to reach them. Even if they like me, they may not hear what I've got to say, or they may think, man, his life is so different that he can't relate to where I'm at. The most credible messengers for this campaign in these closing days, hours, minutes is going to be all of you. You talking to your friends, relatives, people in your communities, your coworkers, your ability to speak to them in real talk about what's at stake and why this is so important is going to make all the difference. And if you all do that, I promise you, Kamala Harris is going to be the next president of the United States, and we can build on the progress we've already made and look forward to a much brighter future. So I appreciate all of you. And thank you for the extraordinary work you guys are doing. I'm proud of you.
President Obama, can I ask you a question?
Yes, you can.
You talked about when you came in, the crisis that we were in, it was because of the housing crisis. I mean, it was 53% of Black wealth was wiped out.
Right.
And you tried to deal with that. And we didn't build a lot of homes, frankly, between 2010 and 2019. Can you talk
Right.
about why her plan to build 3 million new homes is so important to deal with the rising price of rent, things like that?
It's vitally important. We never fully recovered from what happened in 2008, 2009, because not only did the housing market collapse and suddenly all kinds of mortgages were underwater and prices plunged, but essentially developers said, we're not going to go take the risk of building new housing. And so they pulled back. There was a lot of excess inventory. And what they started getting comfortable with was the idea of just building luxury housing, housing that was for the people who still had a lot of cash, and not building a lot of affordable housing. And look, there's some work that we need to do, and Kamala is committed to doing this work, not just to financing the construction of new homes, but also making sure we get rid of some of the red tape and regulations, even in democratically controlled cities, that say, all right, we're zoning so that it has to be single family homes as opposed to multifamily units, which are cheaper, but provide people the ability to get a foothold into the housing market. She's got a concrete plan. It is a sound plan. Again, I want to make sure that we don't overhype this. She's not going to immediately, or even in one term, reverse all the problems that we've seen building up in the housing markets over the last decade. But she's going to make a substantial dent. And that is the kind of initiatives that we're going to need to make in order for our communities to have the same opportunity for owning their own home and building and accumulating wealth as other communities are able to do.
You also had to grapple with issues dealing with police and shootings. And you talked about Donald Trump's record. I mean, here's somebody who is openly saying he wants to give police 100% immunity. He wants to bring back stop and frisk, and he wants to let cops loose for a week that he says will fix all the problems. That should be dangerous to any black man out there, whether you are low income, working class, middle class, upper income. That's scary.
Well, you remember what was Stevie Wonder's song? You can't cash in your face. So, that's something that impacts everybody. And again, most criminal law is dealt with at the state levels. The vast majority of people who are incarcerated under state law. Federal government accounts for maybe, let's say, 10% of criminal law. But when I was president, for example, Eric Holder was my attorney general. And after discussions with Eric, one of the things he did was to change policy inside the Justice Department to send a message to attorney generals. You will not be rewarded simply for getting the maximum sentence on nonviolent drug offenses. You will be rewarded for getting the fair and proportional sentence. And that was a system-wide change in policy. And it's one of the reasons why, during the course of my presidency, we saw a drop in the federal prison population at the same time as we saw a drop in crime, right? So the president can set a tone. And the tone I tried to set was not to say that police were somehow always wrong. The vast majority of police are trying to do a tough job. And a lot of our communities are under-policed and need more police, but they need police that are partners with the community, that know the local businesses, that know parents, know the schools, know the kids, can distinguish between somebody who is actually trying to create a danger for that community and a kid who's just wearing a hoodie. And, there are a whole range of strategies in which the federal government can work with state and local and municipal governments to try to continue to improve the building of trust between our communities and police departments to help make sure that there's funding there to train police so that they can do a job that will keep them safe, as well as make sure that everybody is focused on stopping crime and not just resorting to stereotypes. That can be done, but it's sure not going to be done by Donald Trump. It's going to be done by somebody like Kamala Harris, who has experience as a prosecutor, but also understands that our criminal justice system works best and our communities are safest when people can reliably count on making sure that the criminal justice system is not subject to any kind of racial bias. And that's a big task. We're not going to do it again in the first year or 2 or 5, but we can get started moving on the right direction. So listen, I just want to thank everybody who's been involved. Roland, I appreciate you, man. Thank you, Khalil. Thank you, Michael. Quinn, everybody who's been involved, everybody who's out there, let's make sure to get to work. We got a few days left, and there, there's nothing that we can't do for 10 days. Us putting everything we got into it, the day after, our communities and this country is going to feel better if we understand that we're moving forward with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, as opposed to if we wake up and now we're hearing more of the crazy talk coming out of a Donald Trump and JD Vance and the entire crew of people that they've now surrounded themselves with. My understanding, they were in Madison Square Garden today, and some of the stuff they were talking about gives you some indication of the kinds of divisive politics that they represent. That's not what this country needs. That's not going to help people pay the bills, raise their families, make sure their kids got a bright future. Kamala and Tim, they're going to put us on the right track. All right. Love you guys.